welcome to another episode of Seeds of Wisdom. I'm Rachael Wolff, and this is brought to you by From a Loving Place. Today, I am so excited to have Raquel Bravo. Now, Raquel is one of those women I've met, the universe brought to me. Like, it just was one of those great things that she was brought into my life, and it was an instant connection. And I'm sure everyone has felt that before, where it was just like, there's something about this person that I have to get to know more. And so I started reading Raquel's blog, Stillness Within, and it touched me on such a personal level. So I'm so excited to have her here with us today, talking about her seed of wisdom, uncovering gifts through shadow work. Raquel, will you please introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be on here, and I'm extremely inspired by you holding these podcasts, because it's something that I have thought of doing, but have yet to find the courage to start it up. So my name's Raquel, and I'm not a life coach. I'm not a teacher. I don't have any kind of business on the side where I work with people. I'm a respiratory therapist. I work at a hospital. I have a full-time job. I work in a cardiac lab. And I would say the biggest thing to know about me is my spiritual path and how I got to where I'm at now, and how my past and my struggles led me to the point to where I'm at right now, to where I started my blog 2 years ago.
Well, I'm so excited to dive into this because a lot of people don't know what shadow work is. So tell me a little bit about shadow work.
I didn't really, I'd heard the term before, but I couldn't quite comprehend what shadow work was. And I actually didn't fully grasp what it was until I started doing it. And I didn't make this conscious decision where I said, oh, today's the day I'm going to start my shadow work. It just sort of happened in that where I was at in my life in 2020, when the pandemic hit. I just felt like I was not being true to myself. And I just felt like I was chasing all these outward things, trying to find ways to improve the way I felt on the inside. And I thought all of these things on the outside were supposed to make me feel better and supposed to give me this fulfilling life that I had been trying to chase, since I was a teenager. So when I made the decision, I need to look at myself, I need to look deep into myself, I didn't realize that that's what I was doing. That's what shadow work is you're looking into yourself, into how you ended up. For me, it was like, how did I end up here? What patterns in my life had brought me to where I was at that point? So shadow work is, it's looking at the deep, dark parts of yourself that are unconscious. And I find this so funny. They're unconscious, like you're not conscious of them, but they're the patterns that are driving your life. So you're so unconscious, but these are the things that are running your life. These are the things that are, you're making decisions based off of these behaviors and patterns that are deeply ingrained, and you don't even know they're there. They just seem normal. They seem like this is normal for me, until you start to realize, I'm not very happy. And then you start looking inward. So that's shadow work.
I love that explanation. And I know that that's what I had to get to too, is to stop looking outward for outward fixes, or somebody else to change, or something else to change outside of me to change, and look at what my patterns were too. So that's why I feel like your work deeply resonates with me, because looking inward to me is the only answer to fixing the outward.
Yeah. Otherwise, you spend your entire life trying to find something on the outside that's going to make me feel better, and that chase never ends.
Yeah. Yeah.
it will never end. If that's what you believe, if that's the belief, then you're just going to keep chasing after one thing after another, after another, after another. And really it comes deep from within.
Well, and it's so funny because for me, it really shows up in my self-talk, in the talk that's going on in my mind, whether it's about my partner, about my kids, about
Yes.
my whoever, whatever it is, about my family, about strangers. It's that talk that helps me see what my true patterns are.
Yeah. I call that the inner critic.
Yeah.
That's my inner critic. And so let me start off by telling you a story of how I ended up getting to the point where I had completely gone into self-denial. And it took me a long time to kind of pinpoint when this started. And it actually started when I was a child. So when I was a young child, I used to love to read. I would write stories. I would paint, color. My mom and my oldest sister, they were both artists. And so they would be like, oh, she has the artist bug. She has the artist bug. Because I'd be constantly coloring, drawing, anything artistic I love to do, to just sit in that quietness and work on whatever was coming out of me. Even, and it wasn't like I was this great artistic person where, they thought, oh my gosh, she can be famous one day. I just loved to do it. So as I started to get older, I would say it was about 9 or 10 years old. I had a birthday party with my family, and my sister and my mom were so excited about the present they got me. And so I'm pumped up. I'm like, wow, this is my big present. I wonder what it is, because they were pumping me up over it. And I open it up, and it's this blue, it's like a tackle box, but it's an artist tackle box.
Mm-hmm.
So you open it up, and these layers, these shelves fold out, and you can put your paints and your paintbrushes and, anything artistic goes in this box. It was like, I called it my artist tackle box. I open it up, and I felt totally deflated. I was like, ugh. And I wanted to be like, oh, thank you, this is great. But inside, it was not what I wanted. And so later on, I went to my mom and I said, I don't want to receive any more art stuff for presents. And I don't remember if she asked me why. She might have, but I don't think I could have explained to her why. But in hindsight, in doing all this inner work, I realized that the friends that I had made, the new friends I had made, they were not into art. And I was trying so hard to fit in with groups of friends at school, with neighborhood kids. Nobody was doing art. The people that I was around were not doing art. And to me, I felt like it was childish, and I wanted to be more grown up. So I completely shut that side of myself down and just said, I'm not doing art anymore. This is for babies. I want to do what these other people are doing because they seem to fit in. So I want to fit in. Mm-hmm. And really that came from a place of feeling rejected. For most of my childhood, I was a sensitive kid. We hear about empaths. I was extremely sensitive, and I could always feel and tell when somebody didn't like me or if I was doing something wrong. I was always trying to adjust myself to make that other person feel better or to fit in with other groups of people. So that was the beginning of what I call self-denial and completely shutting down that creative side of myself.
So as an adult and getting back to, what did it take for you to uncover the gifts through shadow work? What did it take?
So in 2010, I had gone through this really, really heavy depression, and I was trying to get out of it because I had been there before in my younger years, and I knew I was spiraling back into that place. So I was just doing constant prayer, pleading with God, like something has to change in my life. And I ended up coming across Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth. And I had it on my shelf for a couple of years. I had tried to read it, a couple of years before that when he was big on Oprah. And I could not understand what he was talking about. everybody seemed to be having these like aha moments. And I was like, I have no idea what this book is talking about. So I just shelved it. And then in 2010, when I was going through depression, I had this inner calling to pull it back out. And when I started reading it, I had that awakening. I had this awakening into that I was not my mind, that my mind was separate from what I was. And at the time, I didn't quite comprehend what was happening because I hadn't been on a spiritual path. I hadn't like heard of enlightenment. I hadn't heard of self-realization, nothing, but I just felt this huge shift in myself. And it was then that I was like, oh, I have to write about this. And I was journaling and I created a blog in 2010 and I called it something like the ego or, something like that. I just wanted to get all of this out and I wanted to get it all out through writing. And I even started creating a fiction story and I was writing every day, making it, and I was going to write this book. And so that's how this gift of writing started to come out. That's when I remembered it was like in 2010 when it came out. And then, life started happening. I got back into this relationship with this man that we had been on and on again. And everything just shut down. Like everything, like life took its back over its priority of my gifts. So I completely closed down the blog. I stopped writing the book. And I went back to like, oh, I'm going to get married. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to do what society is telling me that is I should be doing that everybody else seems to find fulfilling. So then in 2020, when I started diving into shadow work, about 6 months into that is when I started feeling that call, like, I want to write this blog. I want to create this blog. And it was so funny when I did that, I remembered that I had created a blog in 2010, which I had totally forgotten about. And I started in 2018, even before shadow work, I felt this huge calling to create mandalas and teach myself how to draw mandalas. And so I started doing that. That was probably the opening of my art gifts coming back in. But in 2020, it was like blown wide open.
It's amazing to me once you open that door, all the stuff that starts coming out of it.
Yeah.
Because it's just allowing ourselves to be open, allowing ourselves to embrace that part of us. So it was through the writing that you really got to see these patterns. Is that
the patterns, the shadow work patterns that I was working through? It came in, they would come to me in the form of journaling, meditation. I spent a lot of time alone in nature, just in silence. It was really about being in silence and being quiet and letting this stuff show itself. But I had to be open. And it doesn't feel very good when you're looking at things, when you're looking at patterns that have been driving your life. You kind of, there was a lot of time in that period where I felt a lot of shame about decisions I had made, behaviors that I had acted out in the past. And I think that's where people get tripped up with shadow work, is they see these things about themselves and they're so painful to look at. And so they turn away, they close the door because it's painful and you don't want to see these things about yourself. But if you can just stay in that space of, I'm okay, even though I'm feeling this pain, I'm still okay. Everything's still okay. And you work through it and it comes up and it releases.
One of the things that I had realized is, a lot of the times when we have these defensive characteristics, it's because it's this way we think we're protecting ourselves when it's really hurting not only us, but the people around us too.
Yeah.
But it's being able to see that and accept that's where we were then. We did the best we could then.
Mm-hmm.
And now we just simply move on. We're doing the best we can now and now. And it just always gets better. The more we look, the more
Yeah.
we accept and be open to
Yeah.
seeing, oh, I'm sabotaging this because of this pattern.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like peeling away the layers of an onion,
Yeah.
right? Like the more layers that come down, the more free you begin to feel. And this energy that starts to come up, it's like it took so much energy to repress that. And now that you're no longer repressing it, you're like, oh, I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to look around me and feel better about what I'm seeing. And I'm not so judgmental of other people because I'm not constantly criticizing myself. You know?
It's such a barometer of where we are, of how we're judging others.
Yes.
You know, it's like, I'll notice that, like, if I'm in a negative place, that judgment will skyrocket. And it's just like, okay, that's my stuff. That's not about the other person. It's about me.
Yeah.
And and I feel like shadow work is what helps us see that, to see that when we're being you know, when we're healthy, we don't put negative energy out in the world towards others.
Right.
When we're in a healthy mindset at that moment. And it's a moment to moment thing. It's not like, oh, we're doing this work and now all the time, now we're going to be perfect all the time. It's, you know, like you said, it's layers.
For me, what was really profound was seeing those critical behaviors that I had adopted from my father. And so I don't think that we put as much importance as we should as growing up, where we're looking to these adults to show us how to live in the world, right? And these adults, they don't really, a lot of them haven't done their own inner work. A lot of them don't know the truth of their being. So they're teaching us kids how to live based off of how they were taught how to live. And my father, he's very, very critical. And I picked up these perfectionist tendencies and just thought they were my own. And I picked him up as a young child. If I can be perfect, then I'll be liked, then I'll be loved, then I'll be accepted. And that's how my inner critic was formed. I'm not doing this right. I'm not doing that right. I'm not doing this the right way, or perfect, or good enough. If I can just be better at this, then I'll be accepted, then I'll be loved. And so it's like, this is how this inner critic is formed from a young age. And so if we're criticizing ourselves, we're criticizing everybody else. They're not doing it the right way either, right?
This is exactly why I love using the garden analogy, because before we are conscious of our gardens, we've planted things that other people have given us.
Yeah.
And we've fed those seeds and we've nurtured those seeds with doing and repeating the same patterns. But what we don't know and some people never know, but if we're doing inner work, what we realize is we can weed out things that don't work in our lives. We can weed out old behavior patterns. We can weed out belief systems that aren't serving us or humanity or anything. It's our own personal gardens, and all gardens look a little different and are going to be designed different and everything. And that's all okay. And, you know, I feel like shadow work is the weeding. It's going, what do I want? What don't I want?
Yeah.
You know, going.
And you're saying, like, what's mine and what's not mine.
Exactly.
And, oh, this isn't mine. Let me give this back to society or the person who taught it to me. This isn't mine. This isn't how I'm going to choose to live my life.
And they can choose to keep it in their garden if they choose to, and we have no control over that. And that's, I feel like that's what's beautiful about doing inner work, is realizing that we're all in charge of what's in our own gardens, what's in our own belief systems. We can't change other people. So the best thing we can do is change ourselves to the people we want to be, and then decide how much of the other person we want in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
but they say, like in ancient teachings, that when you are doing this work on yourself, you are also working on generations before you.
Yes.
So it affects everybody. And I actually have seen that, where all the work I've done on myself, I see it affecting people in my family. I see them, like I have some of my sisters read my blog, and then we end up talking about spirituality and inner work. And it's like 10 years ago, I never would have thought that would happen, you know? And so you can see it, you can see the work, the inner work that you do, how it affects your family, but even like your coworkers and your job. And I mean, the outward effects of inner work, it's like ripples.
Well, and because we're all energy, so it's just like you and I, it was an instant, like we were just two faces on Instagram. You know, it's not like there's anything just surface wise that would go, oh, we're going to connect personally here.
Yeah.
But we did, and it was felt instantly. And that's what I feel like when you're doing that kind of work, you're going to attract like energy.
Yeah.
You're going to attract those kind of things. And so, and it's also going to throw off energies that aren't like, so they're going to start resisting each other, and they're going to shift. And sometimes they'll get closer together because both parties will shift. And other times they'll just be like, whoop, go different ways.
Yeah.
And
I always like to think
so
of it in
amazing.
terms of like what you're bonding over with somebody else.
Yep.
And I think as humans, we're so used to trauma bonding that when you start working through your trauma, there's nothing left traumatic to bond over. And so sometimes those people that are still trying to bond with you over trauma, you're like, oh, that doesn't really feel good to me anymore. And that's what shifts the relationships.
And the beautiful thing is that that's okay.
Yes.
It's okay for relationships to change and outgrow people, and appreciate the place they had in your life for the time that they were there and that they were meant to be there, but then allow them to be where they need to be for them, and us to be where we need to be for us.
Yeah. We totally speak the same language.
I know.
That's so cool.
Yes. And for anybody listening, we have never spoken to each other besides through emails.
No.
Like this is the first communication that we were actually getting into. So
I know. I feel like I could probably talk to you for hours.
I love it.
I know.
And that is our time. That's our time we have for today. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you being here. I feel like you speak on such a personal level that, you know, whoever sees this is going to get something from it, because it's so personal.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you sharing this with us. And I appreciate you giving whoever listens to this, because I know whoever's attracted to be here and listen to this and see this is meant to be here for a reason. They're meant to hear it. They're meant to hear something in it. And I'm so grateful that you came on today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
If you like this, make sure you leave us a comment so that we know that we're doing a good job with what we're doing. Thank you.
Keep shining your light.
Bye. Thanks. Make sure to follow the links that accompany this episode. You will learn a lot more about today's guest and see what they have going on now. You will also get all the links to follow them on their journeys if this seed resonates with you. If you like what you heard, remember to like, follow, and subscribe to FromALovingPlace.com and all its platforms. Remember to come back next week for another Seed of Wisdom.